Do you want to win your fantasy football league? Well, then stop drafting bad wide receivers and take these 7 instead. And we're starting with Robert Woods, who appears to be nearly 100% healthy in Titans camp. And this is borderline absurd for a 30-year-old wide receiver who had surgery in November, like 8 months before camp started. Now, here's why him being healthy matters. Robert Woods is likely to be the #1 wide receiver on this team, at least to open the season. And the Titans currently have the most vacated targets in the NFL, meaning from last year to this year, they lost 67% of their targets. A lot of those were A.J. Brown. Now, here's the thing. Robert Woods is indeed coming off an ACL tear, and he is now over 30 years old, which we don't like this combination, but Woods was still top 20 at beating man coverage last year. And I'm going to be honest with you, his current target competition is not that threatening. I like Treylon Burks, but again, he's a rookie right now who apparently is struggling in camp. There's Nick Westbrook, who only has 41 career catches, and then he can go through the rest of these guys. Racey McMath, who's this big, athletic, fast guy, but he only has 6 career NFL targets. This is Robert Woods' team. He's the wide receiver 1. So take Woods and then grab this next guy in round 4. And that would be Allen Robinson, who the Rams seem to have major plans for. The expectation from Sean McVay is that he'll be an upgraded version of Robert Woods. And this is fantastic news to hear because every single year of his career while he's with the Rams, Robert Woods was a top 20 wide receiver, including last year in a limited sample, he was wide receiver 11. However, even though this role has finished top 20 every season, Allen Robinson is being taken at his floor, in my opinion, as the wide receiver 20. And now he's paired up with the #1 quarterback in completion percentage versus man in Matt Stafford. But that's not all. Because unlike Robert Woods, head coach Sean McVay stated that Allen Robinson is going to be a major threat in the red zone for them. And this is important news to hear because last year the Rams ranked 3rd in amount of red zone passing attempts. And now this creates top 10 upside for Allen Robinson, who you can currently get in round 4. And you can get this next wide receiver in round 11. So check this out. Cowboys free agent wide receiver addition, James Washington. He fractured his foot. He's going to be out 6 to 10 weeks at least. And Michael Gallup isn't going to be out there for the start of the season. And according to Pro Football Focus, it's likely he doesn't return until mid-season, week 8 after their bye. So Sal, what does this all mean? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's discuss. It means that rookie wide receiver Jalen Tolbert is a must draft. He's expected to be the #2 wide receiver for Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, yet he goes as the wide receiver 54 in fantasy drafts. Here's what you need to know. Tolbert earned an elite 34% career college target share, which was top 4% of all time. Not a lot of dudes get anywhere close to that. Here's another way to look at this. Jalen Tolbert generated nearly 1,500 yards last year, and only first-round pick Jameson Williams of the Detroit Lions had more of all the drafted wide receivers. So you should prioritize Tolbert in round 11 and consider this next 7th rounder a must. And that would be brand new Jaguars wide receiver Christian Kirk, who was given a 4-year, $72 million deal this offseason, about $18 million per year, which was 20% more than any other free agent wide receiver. And this makes Kirk a top 20 paid guy at the position. Now, here's what this means. You can expect Kirk to be used a lot because the Jaguars front office has to justify this highly scrutinized deal. And you can benefit from this. See for yourself. Kirk currently goes outside the top 40 wide receivers in fantasy drafts. However, in my opinion, he has the best chance, the most versatility in the slot and out wide to be the #1 receiver on this team. Marvin Jones, we know what he is at 32 years old. Zay Jones is solid, but he's not that standout #1, and then guys after that don't have a shot to be the #1 receiver. Now, this is what Kirk did when he had to operate as the #1 receiver last year when DeAndre Hopkins was out. He averaged about 7.1 targets per game and 14.7 expected fantasy points per game. And expected fantasy points means given his opportunities, the amount of points you can expect him to score in an average situation. And that number of 14.7 would have ranked top 20 amongst wide receivers last year. Now let's discuss a receiver who has an even higher ceiling. Come on down, Chargers wide receiver Michael Williams. Mike Williams is now a top 12 paid wide receiver in the NFL. And at the time of his contract, he was actually a top 10 paid wide receiver. Now here's some exciting news for Mike Williams. Last year, he was the 5th overall receiver in end zone targets. The amount of targets that are actually, you are in the end zone already. It's easy pickings for the touchdowns, baby. And he was top 10 in deep targets per game. 12th overall in deep targets, but on a per game basis, top 10. This means he has the fantasy cheat codes, but that's not all. Because unlike the far majority of wide receivers in the league, he has this man, Justin Herbert, who was both top 3 in efficiency last year and passing volume volume, throwing nearly 40 times per game. And now this benefits Williams, who was the wide receiver 1 in Los Angeles. And I know what you might be thinking, but what about Keenan Allen? There's no doubt that Keenan Allen has been a fantastic wide receiver in his career, but there are some major concerns. Allen's efficiency last year, his yards per route run, were a career low by 32%, and they've dropped for 3 straight years. And Allen is now 30 years old, and 30-year-old wide receivers on average see an additional efficiency drop of 25%. This is bad news for Allen, but great news for Mike Williams. And speaking of good news, Michael Thomas looks like he's 100% healthy in Saints camp. And now due to this, he's risen about 27% in drafts over the last 2 weeks. He now goes as a top 30 or so wide receiver in drafts, but here's the thing. He's only going to continue to rise and likely be a top 20 wide receiver in drafts by the time September comes. So here's your takeaway. Michael Thomas has never finished in a healthy season worse than the wide receiver 7 in fantasy. And he's now the healthiest he's been in 2 years, and he's paired with an aggressive downfield thrower in Jameis Winston, who the last time he started a complete season had 2 top 12 wide receivers. I continue to be very high on Thomas. He's a borderline top 50 player for me overall. I'm 15 spots ahead of ADP, and this is likely only going to continue to rise for me. Now, if you'd like to see the rest of my top 200, it's updated every single week, my wants and avoids, my tiers, and a whole bunch more, then click the link in the description and follow these 2 simple steps to acquire your supreme cheat sheet. And you'll also get a $20 Amazon gift card. And if you don't like the cheat sheet, it costs $10 to deposit. I'll refund that $10 and you can keep this $20 Amazon gift card. Yes, this is a completely risk-free offer in which you can actually profit from. So if you want to join the thousands of other people using the cheat sheet, just click the link in the description to learn more. So you want to secure Michael Thomas and then grab this stud receiver in round 5. And that's because Brandin Cooks is in a far better situation than you may originally think. His team, the Houston Texans, have a 4.5 win total according to Vegas this year. And this means they're likely to have to pass a lot more as they'll be trailing in games, especially in the second half. But that's not all, because Davis Mills, a second-year starter, is in a better situation than you think. Mills was actually 4th in deep ball accuracy last year, and he had a better grade according to Pro Football Focus than Trevor Lawrence, the #1 overall pick. And now this next stat is pretty crazy. Brandin Cooks averaged 15.5 fantasy points per game in 15 career games with Deshaun Watson. And in 2021, in 12 career games with Davis Mills, he averaged the exact same, 15.4 points. So expect 120 plus targets from Cooks this year, and because of this, you could draft him with confidence in round 5. So these were 7 wide receivers that you actually want, not those terrible ones. But you also need to stop drafting bad running backs. And if you want to see the 5 that you should be drafting, well, check out this beautiful video right here. And once you're done watching that, you'll be ready to smack around your league mates. And by the way, hit subscribe.